Hi and welcome to the show. It's been a long time since I've done an actual personal presentation. As you know, I am a refugee from Ukraine. I am English. However, I live in Ukraine. But for the last 3 years, it's been impossible to live in Ukraine where I live. Hence, I've been traveling the world. I've been religiously developing. But it's been impossible for me to have a studio set up. I found somewhere where I can have a studio set up, hence the broadcast. I've learned a lot of things on my travels, so sit back and let's see what I've learned about the nature of Jinn. The nature of Jinn. Jinn are enigmatic beings, often described in Islamic tradition, Hindu tradition, and even Western tradition, where they appear as the fairy or the fae. They are seen as enigmatic beings. However, the Islamic tradition, they describe them as being created from smokeless fire. However, they give them the ability to shapeshift. Unlike humans who are made from clay and angels who are created from light. The realm in which the Jinn exist overlaps ours. However, fundamentally they are invisible to us. But they are within our perception. And this is something to really be quite vigilant about, because quite often we can all be affected by what the Arabics called wuswus. What are Jinn? Regardless what account you read of Jinn, Muslim, Islamic, Arabic, Hindu, even Western, Jinn are enigmatic beings. Now, in the Islamic tradition, they are created from smokeless fire. Unlike humans who are created from clay. This was, of course, the big problem between Jinn and human, because Iblis refused to bow to something which was made of clay. Interestingly, the angels who are created from light, they didn't seem to have any problems about bowing to the human. I beg your pardon. Jinn therefore exist in a realm where some sources say they can see us, but we cannot see them, but we can perceive them. Some people can see them physically, but generally speaking, they are invisible to human perception. However, let's listen to what that means. In Arabic, there is something called wuswus, where the jinn or the qarim whispers to the person. Quite often we ignore this, but often we do take credence from what they are saying. It's interesting that I knew somebody who investigated serial killers, and they all said that a voice told them to do something. Yet on the same level, we have people who are extremely pious, and they talk about an internal voice instructing them. This is something to take into account when we are dealing with something as complex as the Jinn. What type of abilities do Jinn possess? Well, we all know about the shape-shifting. But what not many people know about is the ability that Jinn have that allows them to take the form of animals like snakes, goats, cats, and dogs. I've actually come across this phenomena in India. A witch friend of mine, daughter, brought home a puppy. They wanted to rescue it. However, during the night, the puppy started howling. My friend went down to attend to the puppy. She said its eyes had changed. They were like bright red, and it was beginning to develop horns, and it was literally turning into a Jinn. She screamed, and her children came down, who are exceptionally cynical towards her. They don't give any credence to her supernatural abilities, and they all ran behind her frightened because they could see that the puppy was no longer a puppy. It was turning into something absolutely horrendous. So, this phenomena of Jinn taking the form of animals is not rare. For example, J.S. Garrett, the magician, if you go on his website, you can see him handling wild animals like they are domesticated pets. Once again, that is a sign that the Jinn has entered the animal. So, this is a phenomena that doesn't take much research to find out to be true. Now, there's also other traditions that state that Jinn can take on human form. This is something that was played around in Wishmaster, if anybody remembers seeing that program. However, they take on the form so well that they just look like humans. Now, the other thing of interest is that some Jinn can fly. In the old days, the Jinn allegedly couldn't fly over salt water. So Jinn was mainly an Eastern phenomena. But since the 70s and air traffic going all over the world, Jinn now are essentially all over the world. So, there's no escaping them. And literally after the Gulf War, many soldiers brought back trinkets, and they didn't realize these trinkets were haunted. So although Jinn can fly, they are limited to where they can fly, but now modern inventions like the aircraft and the boat, now Jinn are literally everywhere. Jinn are essentially tribal. You have kings, you have queens, you have princes, you have princesses. So among the Jinn, some live in freedom, while others are bound by supernatural forces, divine decree, or even the will of humans. For example, there are humans who know ancient rites and they bind the Jinn, but binding is very, very complicated. It usually involves using a much more powerful Jinn to bind a subordinate Jinn. Then you're into a very complex situation because the binding is only for a certain amount of time, and if that time goes over, you also have the Jinn that bound him, and then also the Jinn's family that was victim to being bound, and none of them like humans, so you can find yourself in a very strange predicament. Now, the other interesting thing is in Islamic belief, if there is a pious Jinn, it is thought to be able to enter paradise, while non-Muslim Jinn, well, they're another category. Apparently they do not enter paradise. But Exceptions exist. For example, if a jinn is seen to be pious, even if it is not Muslim, it can still enter paradise. There are written accounts of very powerful jinn who have served prophets or they have done good deeds, have been judged differently from other jinn. We're going to look at the fundamental differences between humans and jinn. Well, if we look at this from a socio-economic policy to be kind of political, the primary distinction between human and jinn lies in their nature and abilities to build civilizations and conquer vast lands and achieve remarkable feats through physical strength and intellect and collective effort, whereas jinn do everything supernaturally. This is something to be very, very aware of. There are many people who claim to call jinn. Now, I'm not denying that they are calling jinn, but what I am denying is what type of jinn they are calling, because if we are going to learn from the Quran. In the Quran it states that jinn can do anything, build houses, you name it, they can do anything. Whereas the jinn that magicians call seem to be very limited in their abilities, and they don't show this kind of supernatural power that we read about in Aladdin or 1001 Nights or the Quran. I want to look at the concept of jinn highlighted in the Quran, particularly the story about the Prophet Solomon or Suleiman. What's so special about Solomon? Well, he was granted authority over the jinn. He was given a special ring. An angel gave him a ring. So essentially he commanded their obedience. He's so far in history is the only person who's been able to do this. They built him cities. They dug for gold. There's a very, very famous place that is called the Jinn wells, which essentially is on top of a mountain, and these wells go through the mountain into water. These were allegedly dug by the jinn, and this is in a time before massive digging machines, and they are perfectly round, and they go straight through the mountain into water. So Solomon had this great power that the jinn worked for him. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen great palaces made. We've read about it in 1001 Nights. We've read about it in Aladdin, but we've not seen it. So, we can understand by this that Solomon was the only person to have this kind of command. However, there is one very interesting story with Solomon. A jinn boasted that he could transport the Queen of Sheba's throne to where Solomon is before he could rise from his seat. However, the task was ultimately accomplished by a being with deep spiritual knowledge, identified as Avis bin Barikiah, I believe, who transported the throne in a blink of an eye. Using the Quran as reference, this illustrates that spiritual beings are actually powerful, much more powerful than the jinn. However, this cannot be disputed that Jinn are the most powerful beings in the unseen world. I want to look at mysterious disappearance and Jinn abductions. This is an object, or should we say an area, which is very similar to the UFO phenomena. There are numerous accounts of people being abducted by aliens. However, there are also numerous accounts of Jinn abducting people, particularly women. Once again, concrete evidence for such claims remain elusive. However, there is one particularly chilling case that describes the mysterious disappearance of a young girl. Her parents bathed and dressed her and applied perfume and sent her outside to play. She wandered into an open field near their house. The entire area was monitored by CCTV, except for a small blind spot. According to the footage, the girl entered the blind spot but never emerged. She had vanished without a trace. Months passed, and then after 6 months, the girl inexplicably returned home. Her family was stunned, yet when questioned, she insisted that she'd only been gone a few hours. A psychiatrist examined her and found no memory of what had happened. When the police reviewed the CCTV footage again, they witnessed something even stranger. The girl reappeared in the exact same blind spot where she had vanished. There was no evidence of abduction, no trace of a crime, just an unexplainable disappearance and reappearance. I think you can see the parallels between UFO and Jinn, but as Jinn were here first, I believe that most of these so-called alien abductions are in fact Jinn abductions. The question I'm always asked is, where do Jinn reside? Well, the traditional answer is the Kaf, which is a supernatural realm that surrounds the earth. However, where do Jinn reside on earth? Typically, they reside in abandoned places, deserts, dense forests, and deep oceans. Locations where human activity is minimal. I've stated this before, but Jinn do not like humans. Interestingly, ancient traditions warn people against venturing alone into areas at night where there are Jinn. It is believed that Jinn are more active in the darkness. I've never found this to be true. I just believe Jinn are active all the time. There are certain ruins and caves and graveyards said to be inhabited by Jinn. Now, interestingly, in India, there is a village that worships the Jinn. It's not even on the map. It exists. And the reason why it's not on the map is so they don't want people to go there, because quite often they use human sacrifice. Now, the other place which is occupied by the Jinn that I know about is the city of the Jinn, which is Ferez Shalkota. There, the Jinn live in the alcoves. If you go there, you can certainly feel them. There is no denying that the Jinn are not there. This also leads us to black magic practitioners try and capture Jinn. So of course they go to such places. this is not easy because jinn are very difficult to enslave, and essentially they really don't want to do anything for humans unless it involves them receiving power or receiving pacts. So, there are many stories of people who have tried to capture jinn and hold them prisoners, but they've all had really diabolical endings. Binding a jinn, I presume, is one of the most stupid things that you can do, because really you're dealing with very malevolent entities. I want to finish by talking about jinn in history and art. Throughout history, jinn have been depicted in various artistic and literary traditions. Some references from ancient texts and museums, such as the Brooklyn Museum, depict jinn in different forms. One artwork portrays a jinn king listening to the grievances of other jinns, reinforcing the ideas that their society is similar to humans, as it has hierarchies, rulers, and obviously internal disputes. In medieval Islamic texts, jinn were often described as living in vast cities, hidden from human sight, sometimes deep underground within mountains. This is very interesting because in Turkey there is a whole underground city that nobody can explain why it's there. Some legends claim that entire civilizations exist parallel to the human world. This is obviously referring to the Kaf. This world is complete with markets, rulers, and armies. I met a high-ranking Sufi who told me that the jinn are in continual warlike states every day. So I believe a fourth-generation Sufi should know. But let's recap. The mystery of the jinn remains a subject of intrigue. They straddle the boundary between myth and religion and the unexplained phenomena. Their existence continues to captivate the minds of believers and skeptics. While some dismiss them as mere superstition and others claim to have encountered these beings firsthand, there is a question, do the jinn exist? If you speak to anybody who is in Islam, they will tell you that they exist. More importantly, we know the jinn exists through Quranic literature and through Eastern literature, but what role are they playing now in our hidden fabric of reality?